If the question is, can you fire federal government employees? Then the answer is, of course you can. But it's a little bit tricky. It's not the same as the private sector. So there are what you call bad employees. They can show up late. They cannot show up at all. They can show up drunk. And for the government to deal with them, it's a little bit different, right? Sometimes it's easier to move the employee, move them from office to office or division to division. It's easier to do that than to actually fire them, which is a shame because when you have bad employees like that, the good employees are the ones that are suffering. The good employees are the ones that are escorting them in and outside of the building. So it can damage morale. It can damage the team, the cohesion, all of that. Now in the private sector, say you show up to work drunk, or you're blatantly insubordinate, you refuse to do work, or you're a poor performer, the employer can fire you. Your boss can fire you because most people work at will, meaning for any reason, as long as it's lawful, right? Any reason under the law, you cannot discriminate, obviously, but you show up for whatever reason and they say, hey, this is your last day, pack it up, you're out of here. Let me give you an example. I was at an agency probably 2 or 3 blocks from the White House in Washington, D.C. And I'm sitting there doing my work and I look up and there's this guy across from me. This guy's falling asleep. He's an older man and this guy had his eyes shut. I mean, completely shut. He was sitting up and he was passed out. And I'm like, well, how long is this guy going to be sleeping? Let me try to wake him up. So, I cleared my throat. I took the stapler and I was hitting the stapler on the desk. This guy wasn't waking up. So then I started saying his name. I was like whispering it, like, hey. He didn't wake up. It's about 30 minutes. Passed out. Sitting up. Couldn't believe it. Supervisor came, got upset. Same guy was having issues responding to emails, responding to phone calls. So he was becoming a problem. He wasn't on my team, but he was becoming a problem for the other team. He still came, every other day he would be there. This is before the pandemic. He was still on the payroll. There was a survey last year that asked supervisors in the government, how do you deal with troublesome employees, with low performing employees? And only 11% of them actually said that they fired them. So the other 89%, they didn't fire. Only 11. So all new federal employees, once they come in, they're on probation. They do 12-month probation. That's typical, 12-month. But sometimes it can be 24 months. Up until recently, DOD was doing pretty much everybody at 24 months probation, meaning that you are an at-will employee for that duration. And after that, all of those federal employees, after they pass their probation period, they have additional layers of protection. Some of them join the union. They get union protections. So what are the main reasons why an employee would get fired? Well, it's pretty much the same anywhere, right? It's misconduct and poor performance. But in the government, oftentimes they will do what you call a PIP, which is a performance improvement plan. And that's when your supervisor and HR, they come together and they outline steps on how to correct the action, how to fix your poor performance. Now, this can include removing telework. Say you're working telework 3 or 4 days a week while you're not performing. So they can take that away. Now, just like with everything in the government, there's an appeal process. You can appeal it, and a lot of people do. In fact, I think last year, 4,000 to 5,000 employees actually appealed their case. And then once you appeal it, there's all kinds of things that are on the table, right? If you have a letter of reprimand in your file, you can actually negotiate to get that removed. And if you do get that removed, that means you can keep applying to government jobs. So check this out. In the government, you'll have a bad employee. They will appeal and they'll say, hey, take out this letter of reprimand. So it gets tossed out, but they have to leave the agency. So they quit or they resign. Then a few months later, they can apply to another agency because their background's clean. There's no letter in their background. So that turns into a cycle where you have these bad apples continuing to get into the federal government. Another protection or law that exists is before any adverse action, you have to give the employee a 30-day notice. And with that, we talked about the appeal process, but there are also thousands of employees that are filing discrimination suits. In fact, I believe the number is 15,000 federal employees are filing discrimination complaints against their agency. So even with the appeal process and how long it takes to actually terminate federal employee, federal employees are still getting fired. Every day on average, 24 federal employees are losing their job. They're getting fired. And even with that number, the private sector is 3 times as likely to terminate an employee as the federal sector. One of the reasons why federal employees have this type of protection is because of the political nature of the job. So if you're working at an agency, you can have a political appointee executive. They could just clean house. If everybody was at will, they could just bring all their own people in there. So that would leave the government employee at the whim of whatever political party was in the White House. But despite this, we still want to ensure that we have an efficient government that's able to pivot and that's agile, that's effective, and can get the work done in a timely manner. That benefits everyone. Now, if you are a federal employee and you're in a toxic environment and you've been seeing a lot of wrongdoing in your office or in your agency, well, in that case, you can blow the whistle. And if you want to learn more about whistleblowing in the government, I want you to watch this video next. If you would like to see more videos like this, please click that like button and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.